let her rip. So, well, you can roll it out. And, you know what? Let me share it. That'll give people time to get in. Let's see. No. Okay. So you're the moderator.
Yep. Just give me 1 second. I just need to see. Oh, why does it say something? It doesn't look like it's posted to Facebook.
It's on my page.
I know, but it says something went wrong.
Hang on, let me look. It's showing I'm live. Hang on. Let's see.
Oh, okay. I think we're good. I think we're good.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, perfect.
Let's see. So you can roll it out and explain everything.
All right. So welcome, everybody. This is a very special edition. We're attempting something different here, where I'm taking over Soulogy's as a moderator instead of Todd Medina. And we're putting Todd Medina in the guest seat instead of a little bit of role reversal. Now, Morgan Lee was supposed to be in the guest seat, but she is overwhelmed with the current upgrades and making interesting noises. I believe that's what Todd said in the background. They're not the good noises, like, you know, we're not talking about sexy moaning in the background there, because we were going to talk about sacred sex. It's she's just processing a lot, and I think she's kind of out for the evening. So Todd will step in. They're the same person anyway, so it doesn't matter. Although Morgan's way better looking to look at, but whatever. So everyone knows that this is normally Todd Medina's platform. So we're going to go through a little bit of a role reversal today. And but Todd, you'll still need to navigate the tech, because when it comes to that, it's a bit of a disaster when I'm involved.
You're good.
All right. Okay.
Either that, or you can, if you're on your phone, you can put the computer on mute and pull
I have
it
my
up.
laptop on. Yeah, I have my laptop on mute, so I can see the Facebook comments.
Yeah. Okay,
but I am. Yeah, but I'm not really paying attention to the Zoom comments here.
Well,
let me just give me 1 second here and close up this.
And we can talk about whatever y'all were going to talk about if you want to. It's up to you.
Well, you put a lot on. I'm like, that's a lot of content for 1 hour to jam in there. So
do whatever you want to do. Do whatever you want.
We'll talk about the most recent thing. What you guys had a dragon experience?
Yeah, last night.
Last night.
We had another one. Yeah.
Another dragon experience. So have you guys been having, in terms of frequency, have you been having a lot of dragon experiences? Like, are they pretty?
We started. She had one with I believe it was a red and a yellow dragon. I think about 10 years ago. They came in, and then I started having them around. Let's see, October of 2018. I was in the Northeast, and I started having them. They started in Sedona, and then I went to the Northeast to Washington D.C. and they were coming around. I think they were actually from Kauai, because once I got to Kauai, and I was there for 6 weeks before she got there, and they were on me every day, every single day, and they were all feminine. But anyway, so then when did we start having them together? Well, in Hawaii we were having, and then we came over to the state, to the mainland in August, and we've had them. You know, we've had quite a few. Like when you came, we had the twin red dragon when you came to visit. But so we had one. The last two we had, one came in as 13th master dragon, explaining to us that we'd met with 12 divine couples, or 12 couples that carried the divine union code, and that because of that, and I guess the work we've done, that we went to the 13th dragon, which was the master dragon, kind of a creator dragon. But the one last night was different. The one last night was real different. It was real powerful. We've been apart. She came in last night from Kansas City, so we've been apart for like 8 or 9 days. And we both did a lot of individual clearing. We were told that we had to do it alone, and it worked out to perfection. So I picked her up at 8:30. We got home probably at 10. Probably lay down at midnight. We just talked, and then we lay down, and it came in. We were quiet at first, and but when it came in, I saw it, and it was a diamond dragon.
Can you just, 1 second before you start on
Mhm.
that part, can you just check the feed on Facebook? Because I'm not seeing any comments. Do
There's
you see
none.
comments?
I don't see any
There's,
comment. Oh, there's one. Morgan put a comment up.
okay, okay. Just want to make sure everyone can hear us. Oh,
Yeah,
hello, Joseph.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Morgan's
There's a
Morgan's
bunch.
in the background.
There's a bunch of comments.
Okay, perfect. Okay, now I
Yeah.
see them. I'm like, what happened to all of our friends? Okay,
Mm.
so you two had experienced a diamond. You're calling it diamond, crystalline, clear, a little bit of opaque in there.
Yeah, it looked like I saw it from the side. She saw it primarily the face, and it had like all the cuts of a diamond. She didn't know
Okay.
if it was a diamond or a crystal, but it was a diamond, and yeah, it had that type of that type of appearance. Um, but what happened was, and I can't remember the order right now. I don't remember the. No, I do remember the order. The first thing that happened was um, Magdalene and Yeshua came in and wanted to merge with us. Magdalene with her, and then Yeshua with me. Now, at that point, she hadn't said anything, and she said to me, "Do you know what's happening?" Because I heard her kind of gasp, "My God." And
Mm-hmm.
so, before she said that, what I had seen, like was my heart and her heart, it was like a pyramid. And so the point of the pyramid I just saw as the universe, basically. And I could feel the merging happening. And then she said they're here. And then once that happened, then I could feel it. And and that went on for a while. Then they both merged with her. Well, they had a triad with, with the universe, and then they merged with her, and then they came and merged with me. And right after that, um, this dragon, and I mean, it came. I saw it. It went right across my line of vision. She saw it face to face, and yeah, it did have a message, and I can't remember because I remember she came out of it. I'll go back in. She has something to say, so it was a female. It was a feminine, and I can't remember right off the top of my head what it was, but I'm sure she'll remind me, or I'll remember in a second. Yeah, it was pretty. It was pretty. It was pretty powerful. It really was.
So would you say, so when these experiences happen for you, are you seeing it with your third eye, or are you seeing it in an astral dream, or are you seeing it kind of a little bit of every, like different sensations?
Before I answered that, she just reminded me. It told us that we were now equal, that we were equals, and that was interesting too because today when we were talking about it, she said, from the moment I got here for the first time, I feel like we're equal. And then they explained to us that he had to come down and she had to go up. So that was important. Hang on. Yeah. So to the question, she has her eyes closed a lot, but I know without asking her because I can remember a couple of occasions she's seen them with these eyes,
Right.
but most of the time I would say third eye. I've seen a lot of it was third eye. Um, in Hawaii, it was actually like physical, and I've seen them with my eyes. Like last night, I saw them with my two eyes. It was in the room,
Okay.
and yeah.
And
But
did they shapeshift on you? Because the dragons do tend to shapeshift. So I'm just wondering if
well,
the two consciousness that's representing, what do you call them? Just you said something.
Yeshua,
Jesus,
Jesus, and Magdalene.
Jesus, yeah, and Magdalene. Do you
Hmm.
feel like they were separate consciousness, or did they basically flip into dragon form after? Because sometimes they do that as well.
Well, I don't have as much experience, but I'll tell you what happened. So, we both feel the same way. We just naturally feel the same way. And that is, and I guess, ultimately that's the way it works. These are aspects of ourselves.
Right.
Magdalene and Jesus have come before. They're merging, and the feeling of the message was the same as what the dragon was. But what happened was, because when they merged with her and then they merged with me, I immediately felt it go pounding into my heart, and I was like, holy shit. And my body was reacting. Kundalini was reacting, in a lot of ways. So then once that started to wear off, it really didn't come down so much. And then I saw the dragon come flying in. Yeah. And so I was just reading her comment. And so what I experienced was, it came in and it was going to merge. And I think that's where she was getting. And that was what happened first, because it didn't give us the message till a little bit later. But when it came in, the first thing I heard, like in really loud terms, like it was in my face, I heard it say, "You are the, are you? No, you guys are the dragon." And it was a very sacredly sexual, and I don't mean like, candles and stuff. I mean power. Like I could feel the power of two dragons, like, coming together.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose, yeah, at some level, it could be a shape shifting of that consciousness. I don't know, but I do feel that they were giving us the same message, basically. But one of those messages was, you've hit this point, and the next message, I would say, just to put it in general terms, was, you're powering up now. And actually, the dragon did go into detail a little bit about manifestation. I don't remember all the particulars because it's just coming back to me now, but I remember the dragons talking about what our abilities would be, um, and something to the effect of, it might take a little while, not to rush anything, not to be, worry about it, that
Right.
this, basically this level had been hit, and essentially there's no going back.
Right. All right. So that was quite recent, because Morgan, she was away for 4 days, a week?
8 days.
8 days. Did she do all those fun little mandalas behind you?
Yes. Yeah,
Very nice.
Yeah.
So then when you guys are apart, because you guys had 8 days to be apart, what was that like? Can you feel each other without saying anything?
Yeah, the first night she was there, because we put our hands together every night. She said when she put her hand out, she felt my hand. So the night before we left, we were in a hotel, and when we went to, lay down, she we started like that, like we always do. Then she grabbed my hand and turned it like that, and like really squeezed it, and I could feel some information coming in, but the human aspect couldn't really understand it, but I could certainly feel the power of the love. So what happened to me the first night, the same night that she felt my hand, is I came to this place where we were able to plug in our RV and broadcast, and I was here like 2-3 hours, and I ended up getting slammed, and I was on the couch for about 2 hours getting all this download from like the mother goddess frequency, very detailed information about the feminine's journey, like almost like the last bit of it, like, this is the rest of the story, you need to know this from this point on.
Mm-hmm.
But so anyway, when I finally got through that and I took a little walk, I came back, I laid down, and I put my hand out. Not only did I feel her hand, but I felt it go like that. So yeah, we can feel each other. Yeah.
You can feel the actual sensation of as if she's physically there, right?
It was the exact same motion she'd done the night before. And we talked about it later, and because she said, "What happened on that night? Did anything happen?" And yeah, so that's, yeah. And so really, like, Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, other than that, yeah, we certainly feel each other. We don't like talk all the time. We probably talk 2 or 3 times, um, for maybe one time for an hour and a half, and another time maybe for an hour. Hang on, let's see. Yeah, and there was another incident too. That's right. So we feel each other. There's no codependent frequency going on. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like we could go, like, we might text message a little bit, but and I can't remember. I think it was the same day. Now that I think about it, we both, or maybe it was the next day, the second day she was gone. We both laid down. We both had to lay down at the same time. Like, we found out later that we both laid down at the same time, and then something came in. I can't remember what it was, but it was compatible. I mean, it was pretty much the same thing. So yeah.
So right now, are you feeling nauseous? Because right now Morgan's feeling a little bit nauseous. I told her to go puke, but I guess that didn't turn out. Because I find, like, for myself, one of the things is I'm a puker, but not in like the bulimic kind of like way. But what happens is when I have too much come in, I have to release it. So for my form, I do puke it naturally up, and then I feel a lot better. So
Yeah.
Are you feeling nauseous? Because you are feeling a little bit off today, like a little bit slower. Not that you're slow, but
No, I think this is a result. I think this is a result of the first day that we were apart. I had something. Franco calls them drop-ins, or people call them walk-ins. I don't really know, but
Oh, okay.
something happened. So my whole disposition, I don't know, it's kind of changed, or gone, or has become the main line has become that part of me. I mean, it's popped in from time to time. What else did you say, second? Because there was something.
Are you feeling nauseous now?
I was fine until I looked at her and I saw her face, and I knew something was going on. And then after I talked to you, so about 10 minutes after 8, I started to get a little concerned. So I still got a little bit of that. So it's more of like, yeah, I can feel her, no doubt, but I'm not nauseous. No. No.
So then, okay, so one of the things that you guys had recently done, so you were on the west coast of the States, and then you trekked your way across to the east coast, and now you're in Florida. And one of the reasons you're in Florida is you guys were keynote speakers at a lay conference at the beginning of January, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So one of the I guess you're as a power team, you guys basically represent quite an exquisite merging where, I met both of you, I would say February of last year in Kauai. So we did have a quick little, like, our first meeting. And if I reflect back on there, you definitely were two people. Like, there was loud Todd and really soft Morgan. And so when we met together, we were just like, blah, blah, blah. It was it's almost like we recognized each other, and we haven't talked to each other forever, even though this is our first meeting. And then we met again in the physical in September, when you guys were in Nguyen on that hobby farm. And even at that point, I can see, so when it comes to energy fields for me, I can feel you guys had a little bit of an eclipse. There was a little bit, so in Kauai, you definitely were two separate energy beings. And then in Nguyen, there was a little bit of an eclipse where there was an overlapping. And what I found is, I'm not sure what happened, but sometime when you landed in Florida, something came in to galvanize you guys further, where the eclipse is almost, there's just peaks of each on the edges, is how I feel. But sometimes when I see you broadcast on Soulogy, like there's a very strong evidence of Morgan coming through. So it's a little bit, and I made fun of you guys on Dragon's Mouth, where it's almost like a Pac-Man. I'm like, what happened? Did one eat the other one? Like, so it's one of those things where it's just, of course, it's one of those phenomenons that have not been documented. So you guys are basically way shorers when it comes to the soul merging process. But it's one of those things where when you were in Florida, something about the Florida vortex supported that galvanization of the two of you guys coming together. So when you were, and then I think what happened was there was another activation when you actually had to demonstrate that this is what your new type prototyping is, I would say templating is, in Florida. So tell me a little bit about the keynote speaking and what your purpose was there.
Yeah, let me just say this first. I think what we figured out last night, she just got in last night, and this is before we put our hands together. So because we talked for quite a while, that there is no eclipse anymore. There's no edges anymore. It's and this was just very much a direct conversation like this, and we both just compared notes, pretty much understood telepathically, and then affirmed verbally that it's occurred. And you would think there'd be, and there was, last night was huge. You'd think there'd be all these bells and whistles and fireworks, but it's kind of a, I don't know, it's an interesting feeling. Now, going to the conference, what was that like? I mean, we did a workshop and we did a keynote speech, and in both cases there were just minimal talking points written down on a piece of paper, and we just did it spontaneously, basically, and it was very good. uh, this has been, you made the comment about I was very loud in Kauai, and she's very quiet, reserved. And so
Yes.
that seems to be one of the uh, characteristics of the evidence, because
Right.
something's happened to me. Now, she's not as loud as I was, but she had no problem coming on tonight. She did the second, I think it was the workshop was the second day. She flew right through that. It was a big deal because that's not something she'd ever done, really, to
Yes.
that extent. And so it took her a little while to integrate that afterwards. Now, I think there was a whole bunch of stuff going on, and it all kind of came to a head about 10 days ago. And so it was just kind of like, she was getting intel for a few days that she needed to go, and I needed to go make this final step alone. And so we got to that point and decided that. And I think that's, that's part of it. But I think the other part of it is, and I think I was talking to you about this. I was talking to somebody about this, that over the last few days, and I don't get a lot of that type of intel. I kept, everywhere I looked was Atlantis, 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 Atlantis. Now, we spent 10 months in Kauai, and Lemuria dimensional episodes, especially in the first couple of weeks, just occurred over and over again, you know. So my feeling is that there's some type of connection to us having been there, and then also, being over here, one Lemuria, the other Atlantis. We all know there was some type of break or friction or conflict or whatever the case is, and maybe we were just doing a part of the team that's pulling those threads together into balance. I don't know, but yeah, I think there's obviously all this movement. The places we've been, Shasta, Sedona, Yelm was pretty powerful. I mean, everywhere, everywhere we've been. You came over, I mean, you went to your car, and we're going to go out with a friend, and you put the keys in the car, and you hear two dragons come and tell you got to go see Todd and Morgan 4.5 hours away.
I know.
That's powerful. I mean, yeah. So I think, yeah, obviously I don't understand it all. Um, I do think too that all the things that have happened to us, like last night as an example, um, it may be Yeshua and Magdalene here and a dragon here, and maybe something else there, but they're all kind of delivering the same message. You know, a lot like what's happening in our community, where people like Rick and Amanda and maybe Franco are all kind of having the same intel, even though they say it a little bit differently.
Right.
Yeah. Another thing that's been occurring, and this has been going on for I don't know, I'd say about 3 months, maybe 4 months, is when we put our hands together, it becomes part of our body becomes literally, it feels like one physical body. And we've had a lot of experiences with that, but now it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, to where it's the legs and the arms, and at times I suppose it's the whole thing. Maybe that's where we're at now.
So for at the workshop, what specifically skill set were you guys basically teaching whoever was in attendance there?
Well, the presentation was shadow work, sacred sexuality, Helios, and sacred union, and then the workshop was really the same thing. And we, of course, we only had an hour in both cases, and so there's not, there wasn't, we couldn't really like cover everything comprehensively in depth, but
Right.
there was some effective spontaneous stuff that happened. She directed three couples to face each other and put their hands together, and that was pretty extraordinary. It was very powerful, and a couple other people did it, that weren't partnered up. But we talked about the shadow work first because I guess if you look at it from an elementary standpoint, like connecting the dots, the shadow work,
Right.
we're all doing the shadow work, regardless of what the subject is or what the objective is.
Now, would you say shadow work is like the foundation? You kind of have to work through that process before you get to the merging or Helios Gammas or sexual union.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't complete that process, can you bypass that process and just go straight to the fun part of sexual union?
No, no, you can't. No, you
Why
can't.
not? Why is everything such a process?
Well, I mean, okay, so let's think of something else.
So what is the value behind shadow work then? Why can't we just bypass that? That seems like a lot of work.
Well, okay, so if you look at if you look at the shadows shroud the soul, and you could say, forget it. Let's not talk about sacred union. Let's talk about, let's talk about, I don't know, teleportation or telekinesis or something that we consider supernatural or sixth sense or whatever. The skills and abilities we have are not available to us. That code's not available to us. Sacred union code's not available to us. Sacred sexuality, if our soul's too shrouded. So, I mean, really, when you get right down to it, in this transition we call ascension, the shadow work is what we've all come to understand. Is we got to handle our shift. We got to handle our stuff and take the focus off of the external and other people and all that, whether we like it or not. So when we talk about shadow work, one thing we say, because everybody wants to partner. I mean, this is pretty much. I mean, if everyone wants to be honest about it, and the first thing we say is, look, because people say, well, when's he coming? When's she coming? Whenever, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
When's my partner coming? And it's like, if you clear enough shadow, you're going to attract the frequency that you are. If you have a lot of shadow, and we all have experience with that, except for you, because you met your divine partner when you were 14, I think.
You know what's funny though? I wouldn't. So yes, okay. So Chris and I have been together since we were 17. We're that high school cliche, but I wouldn't. The funny thing is, like the word divine partner with Chris, we wouldn't call each other that.
And you may, I don't know. That's just semantics, but I mean, I was actually just making a joke, but what was I talking? Oh, well, and if I look at the moment that we met, our journeys are very different. But one thing that's the same is that now she spent 20 years, 17 years, I think, when I met her, 17, 18 years, clearing and developing these, downloading these modalities and processes, and specifically downloading Helios, soul merging, sacred sexuality, sacred union, shadow work, modalities, processes, understanding. Mine was more of a fast track. Mine was 2 years on the streets, contemplating day in, day out, and working through all my shit. But I had a lot of stuff too, as she did. Now, I think what I'm trying to say is that our frequencies were at a certain point that matched, even though I obviously had a lot more shadow and kind of represented the masculine energy, but nevertheless, the frequencies were able to hear each other, if you will. So I think that you know, the shadow work is beneficial whether you're single or whether you're not. Now, the shadow work that we talked about in the keynote and in the workshop was for couples.
Right.
Um, and but you could still apply it to someone that's single, because even if they don't have anyone, uh, if they the more shadow that they clear and the higher they raise their frequency, the more likely it's going to, you know, they're going to attract what they're trying to get to. So, and the same could be said for our skills and abilities, our ability to, you know, my third eye has gotten blown up 3 or 4 times, like most people. But when this happened to me, the day that I took her to the airport and came over here, my third eye just exploded, and I can already tell in 8 or 9 days the difference. Like even Dragon last night, I could clearly see the definition of everything. I mean, I could see the figure itself, um, which, you know, we've had experiences like that before. She's had probably more than I have, but we've had them together since the summer of 2018. But so this is due to a higher frequency. And so what does the higher frequency do? I mean, it's going to make available, you know, higher skills and abilities, you know, more clarity. Clarity was a big word that kept jumping out at me a few days ago. But
Clarity in what sense? Clarity
just
on like the purpose of being here, or clarity as why you had to go through all the things that you needed to do to get to where you are?
yeah, all of the above.
Oh,
Clarity, most of all, clarity as
yeah.
to who we are, and what we're doing here. You know,
So
whether it be,
what kind of clarity, what does that mean to you?
well, when I dropped her off and I came over here, then I got laid out on the couch for 2 hours, and then I got enough energy and equilibrium to go to the beach. I walked down to the beach, and it was like I was 100 feet tall, and the clarity was, you know, I saw a, you know, say a bird, you know, like 50 yards away, and it should be this big, and it was this big. Um, Things like that were happening, but there was also information coming in that was matching that. I also knew that at the same time something was happening with her. I could feel it, which, you know, that night was felt each other's hands. So I mean, there was some, we were together, and that was another thing I understood too, that we were together, even though she was there and I was here. We were together. It was interesting. Um, but I just want to finish up on the conference thing. So we showed people how to merge. Um, you know, simple exercise. Talked about the shadow work. Talked about sacred sexuality. Some of our experiences and what the potential was, and what she understood as what she had received. The importance of it. It's a frequency. It just happens to look like what it looks like to us, you know, with our human aspects and our cognitive mind. But the fact is, it's a frequency. It's a high frequency, and it just happens to look a certain way. But it's something that can be, it can be, you know, more than emulated. I mean, it can be, that code can be picked up, and it's a powerful thing. And I think it's a powerful thing because there's two or more, right? I mean,
So do you feel like I enjoy how Morgan's in typing like a mad person. Why don't you just come and talk to us? She's like prompting us on the side. She goes, oh, and then this happened and this happened.
I'm not watching it.
I know. I just saw her that. So through the process that you guys have both been going through, you've gotten a lot softer, is what she's saying, and she's also taking on some of your attributes and characteristics. This is just Morgan basically programming on the back end, saying that she's becoming a little bit more assertive, I would say, and a little bit more clear of what she wants in her life, and intentionally asking for it instead of letting life happen to her. So that you guys are kind of like getting to a point where your polarization. So what I see as an observer is your polarization of Todd and Morgan, because you guys, your frequency in terms of interaction and how your perspective on life is it's gotten to a point where it is kind of a shadow work when you guys get together. So you almost hit a 0 point when you guys got together and did the work together, because you now carry balanced frequency instead of such an extreme frequency of the human spectrum, right? You guys are a little bit more balanced, and you're a little bit softer and she's a little bit more assertive. So I would say the feminine and the masculine energies have been exchanged, where you carry both, would you say now?
That's well, I think we've always carried both, and we all carry both. But
in terms of actually operating from,
as you know, let's just say embodied.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I spent a lot of time working on both personally, and I know she has, you know, years and years. Mine's been more of a fast track crash course, courtesy of her. but
running the coattails.
Yeah, I think you know, it's I think it's well, you know, it was interesting last night because when Jesus and Magdalene came in, they said we're going to merge. Him with me and Magdalene with her. And then once that was completed, then they both formed a triad, you know, kind of with the universe,
right,
and then merged it with her and then with me. So when it happened to me, I could feel it was like night and day. I mean, of the merging that happened last night, of the mergings that happened, that one was just like my heart exploded, and I could feel the difference. You know, in other words, merging with Jesus was felt a certain way. I'm not saying I didn't feel any feminine energy, but it was a very, you know, it was more masculine, and I'm familiar with that consciousness. But when the both of them hit me, it was I could feel the power, or say the new power, or the full power of the feminine, and I could certainly feel the masculine, but I could tell the difference, if that makes sense. You know, so I think, yeah, I mean, I don't really know this, you know, the specifics. I can only tell you what I feel. I can tell you that our you know, our retrospect on both of our experiences, because we're not like narrating this as it happens, and rarely do we.
right.
But this one was a lot of telepathy over the last, you know, 10 days or so, a lot of alignment, not a whole lot being said about it. But when she came in last night and we talked for a while, it was a very quick discussion. There was no, you know, no convincing anyone of anything. We're just like, this has happened. You know, like, this is what happened to me. This is what happened to you. And it's took us to the same place, and you could feel it. You know, you could just feel it. It was not like the excitable egoic type of stuff, you know, where you get excited, because I can do that. You know, I don't know if I'm out of the woods yet, but it was just it was just understood. And it was a calming kind of thing. It was, you know, like I said, you would think there'd be like fireworks going off and bells and whistles. I suppose that happened once we put our hands together, because it was a very intense experience. Definitely.
So physically, what was happening in the body? Did you guys usually have like increase in heat, or were there body fluids flying?
Hang on, let's see. I think this mic is messed up. How's that? Can you hear me?
Yep, you sound better now.
Oh, well, now that's better. Let me turn the volume up. What happened physically?
Well, just keep it clean, all right, buddy?
It is clean. It is clean, but it's also very fresh, and it is an intimacy, and it is
yes.
a totally different kind of. But I would say, yeah, I could feel her. I know what she's feeling, and it is a full, all chakras, orgasmic, euphoric, soul game, call it. And I did notice, and I mentioned to her this afternoon, that stuff was happening to me that I'd never felt before, and it was physical. You know, it was in my junk. You know, and it was very strange. I would kind of compare it to, like, you know, I know she's talked about it in our Sacred Sexuality, and I think women biologically, you know, in their makeup, have a lot of stuff going on in the yoni, you know, in the yoni. I mean, there's a lot of muscles, there's a lot of nerves, and it's more like a multiple, you know, a multi-sensational type of thing compared to a man. Well, last night mine was very much multi-sensational, and there was a lot of stuff going on, and I can't really describe it very well, but it was pretty. Yeah, it was a. So she says it was a very powerful, soft, pure love moving through the whole body. And mine was too. Mine was too. Mine was exactly like that. But I just noticed the physical ramifications of it because it was very different. I never felt anything.
Right.
It was.
So when you guys, okay, so going back to your workshop in there, do you guys get to the level where you're like, okay, holding hands is, I would say, is pretty tame. Do you guys get a little bit more graphic than that?
When yes. Are you talking about at the conference?
Yes.
Oh, at the workshop. At the workshop. Yeah, we talk about it. We talk about it. We talk about yeah, we talk about the fact that I've had, you know, over a period of time, you know, 50 or 100 female orgasms in different parts of my body, or we've had physical herioscamos where, you know, we were motionless. This is not all. We just follow what we're guided to do. Where you're motionless. If you took a picture, it might look like, you know, something you've seen before, but if you took a video, you'd be like going, what are they doing? But the light bodies, I mean, to me, like the first time it happened, the physical herioscamos was like the light body. We were the light body, but we were the physical body. It was like a quadruple merge, you know? So yeah, we talked about that in the conference and in the workshop. We talked about some of the things that happened. We talked about, you know, that less than G-rated stuff. And we also talked about when these things happen, because again, it's frequency. And we're having a physical experience, and there's new territory, but it's also a dimensional experience. So like when we have these episodes, afterwards, during and afterwards, we have dimensional experiences with our two eyes. Okay. So we look up at the ceiling is the cosmos. We look at the walls and there's no walls. We look at the floor, there's no floor. And we're, right. You know, so
all of that falls away?
That comes after intimacy and, right. And during intimacy. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. See, this is for me, this is quite fascinating because my energetic being doesn't really activate around sexuality. I'm kind of like, best way to describe it for me, it's I'm like a computer system. So when people say things, like I know there are energy systems walking around, I call them the walking hormones, where I can see them walking around, and if you are of the same energy system of them, you can see their physical transformation where they light up. So if you are of similar frequency, let's just say of yours is your power frequency is based in the sexual unions, where it's just an energetic exchange. And there's nothing, I think it's been demonized a lot over the years about the power of sexual energy. I personally don't, I haven't experienced it to the level that you have for sure, but my energy system also doesn't do anything with it. It's just like if I walked by you, it wouldn't do anything to me and vice versa. But the funny thing is, I have been around friends that are extremely powerful in that area, and watching them go through it, like if they really need to output that energy, they look at me like a piece of meat. And they're shocked that I don't react to them. So it's one of those things, and it doesn't matter if it's female or male. Like one of my friends, she's female, and if that power comes into her, she needs to release it. And so it's one of those things where it's just, if there was another person, you guys would react. It's funny to see the chain reaction go through on it. which kind of ties me back to the for the workshop that you guys did in Florida. Did you find that the participants that were really basically drawn to that, did you feel their energy system was similar to yours, or was it could be anybody that can come in and have the same experience?
Well, there was 3 couples. I would say 2 of the couples were probably carrying the code. One of them still had, you know, a significant amount of shadow, let's put it that way. So the 2 that seemed to be carrying the code, it was pretty, I mean, they didn't say anything, but if you looked at the energy between them and the expressions on their face, I don't think there was anything orgasmic going on, but there was definitely the presence of their higher selves, you know, within their physical body. You know, and going back to what you were saying, it's interesting because basically our higher selves, we can watch our higher selves. And we started doing Helios Gamas when we met in 2015, because we didn't see each other for 15 months. So this was a normal thing for us. Watching our higher selves, being our higher selves in dimension, in intimacy, you know, and that's, and so basically what's happening is, and she explains it this way, like when it first started happening, we can watch it. I do like 1/10 of what they're doing. They're showing us basically what to do, you know. But what I was going to say to what you were talking about earlier, it's funny because before we met each other, and in our previous, you know, lives or whatever, previous, in this incarnation, our previous relationships, we're both very sexual, right? But this has been, from the human experience, not that type of frequency. In fact,
is it because you guys have removed that, I would say, distortion in the frequency, so it comes across pure?
Well, I think, well, she had the intent from the get-go to hold the line. She didn't know what to do, but she knew what not to do. So we went through that for a while, and that was a little difficult for me. I didn't totally get it. To answer your question, I would say that we were assisted greatly by all kinds of different circumstances, and basically not allowed to go there, not allowed to move into just straight lust, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And so we had a lot of help. And sometimes I might start going that direction, and 1 or 2 times she might start going that direction. The other just couldn't do it. There could not, we couldn't do that. So, and it wasn't like we didn't want to, but there was something, you know, of a higher frequency, higher self, whatever, the you, me, we, and it, that wasn't allowing it. And so now we're at a point, and we've always kind of understood that this is going to come back, you know, and we've been told, don't worry, and we've been laughed at. You know, we're like, hey, when's this going to happen, you know? And they just laugh and say, don't worry, you're going to see that times a million, you know? So I really do believe that ultimately, because we're in this journey in the physical, that when it comes to sacred sexuality, not like Tantra, but I think more like the experiences we've had, where the light body, through the guidance of the light bodies, are making, having intimacy, and the physical bodies are in full congruence. They're combined, they're merged, you know. And so, but it's interesting because it hasn't been like that. It's not like that. And it's been, at times, you know, we've wondered what's going on, you know, but but now it's with everything else, it's fallen into place, and there's no, there's no pressure. We know, we just keep moving. It's just going to get better and better.
So how would you say that, so Morgan spent 20 years kind of creating this technique, and how is that useful in, say, a person who's interested but doesn't really have a partner? What will that technique do for them?
Which technique? The merging?
Yes.
Well,
because I think there's a lot of work, there's a lot of practitioners out there that do shadow work. So I think that's a little bit more mainstream.
I would say this, okay, that's interesting you say that. I agree. But I also agree that there's some out there that are talking about merging.
There's not a lot of that.
Well, there's some, I've met some, even,
okay.
And I'm not saying there's a shitload of them, but what I'm saying is that, okay, in both cases, and I'm not trying to say that one's better than the other. What I'm trying to say is that, this information that she pulled down is we're talking like day in, day out. We're talking like 8 hours a day or year after year after year, from like a scientific mind. She's got that kind of mind, clinical almost, but connected. So I think when it comes to shadow work, and I do see a lot of people talking about shadow work, but I don't think that they've really got a real understanding of it, because it's, well, I'll put it this way: the method she developed, anyone can do. It's not easy to do because you're alone when you do it, pretty much. It's very confronting. It pulls up all kinds of stuff from the subconscious, and you can shift very, very quickly, or you can run. Now, we've worked with a lot of people. She's obviously worked with many, many people over the years individually. We've worked with people as a couple. We've worked with individuals and with couples. And, sometimes they get to a certain point and they don't want to go any further. So, I don't think the shadow work really ends. And that's probably not the right term. I don't know if that's the right term, shadow work, but it is definitely, the process she has is definitely an easy process to understand, a simple format that has, it took me a while because it looked so simple. But when I started to realize what was happening, then I was sold. I mean, I elevated in 5 weeks more than I did in the previous 4 years on the, 2 years on the streets and 2 years still pretty out of control. But I think so on the shadow work, I think it's let me put it this way. I think it's a more drilled down modality and process. It goes much, much deeper, and it's very easy to check yourself on it, whether you self-regulate it, or somebody's, maybe assisting you. When it comes to the merging, I don't really feel that I could talk too much on that, other than to say that she's got years of experience doing it. We've done it many times. I know and understand that we're all merging all the time to some extent, but this is a very conscious kind of thing that starts to merge the non-physical and the physical. It's, we're talking soul merging. Then there's Helioscamos, which, I think is different. But could somebody do it? Yes, somebody could do it. Yes.
But can anybody do it?
Can anybody merge?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess potentially, yeah.
Or is there a certain DNA coding that needs to be in place for it to be at the point that you guys are at?
Oh, to get to the place we're at?
Right.
I would say that, I mean, to experience the things we've experienced, I'm absolutely 100%, 100,000% convinced that it's a direct consequence of the shadow removal, clearing, whatever that we've both done. There's no doubt. I mean, when you have, when you're sitting across from each other and for 45 minutes, you watch your faces morph into all these different incarnations that each other's had, that on this planet, off this planet, in this universe and other universes, or to have 7 or 8 star family beings appear in the room, enter your body, walk through a wall. I mean, these things are, it's one thing if one person experiences something like that, but when 2 people, I think you have to start saying, maybe that's what it means energetically in the Bible when they say we're 2 or more gather. I don't know. But
yeah.
But I would just say that well, let me be careful. Sacred union, sacred sexuality, yes, absolutely requires a certain amount of clearing or code activation or code opening up to occur.
Now, can you spot if they're ready or not? Like if someone just knocked on your door and said, "Hey, Todd, I want to be like you."
I can't answer that question.
Can you say, "Yeah, you know what, you're ready," or do you immediately be like, "Buddy, you need some work to do"?
That's not my. Now evidently we've been around 12 couples carrying the code.
Right.
We were told that. Now, when I went and made a list, her and I made a list, I think there was 14 or 15 we could think of. So I couldn't even tell you who those 12 are. I could maybe get it right. I don't know. But what I will say is we've noticed, there are, we come across another couple that's carrying the code. They're not built like we. Like, I'm very masculine, she's feminine. You might meet a couple that's, the woman's got a strong mask, so it doesn't have to look exactly the same, but I think the bottom line is that the 2 are at the same frequency, number 1, and number 2, that they've done a significant amount of, enough of shadow work, inner work clearing, to be able to see and sense those things that occur.
So okay, the interesting thing, I guess we have to do a little bit of background story. So for those of you that are new to me, I do have a Facebook page called Flyte, Flyte, and some of the current information that's been coming to me has been on the rogue frequency. So the rogue frequency, just in a nutshell, if you go onto the Flyte page, there's rogue 1, rogue 2, that kind of sets the precedent for the context of this. But the rogue frequency is basically one that is going to be of not the same vibration of the collective. So you are kind of granted a lot of allowance to experiment and do something different. So what I feel really strongly with you two, and it's weird because I'm not like, it's almost stalker level, where it's just like, when I first met you guys, I was like, these 2, first off, you guys are the sweetest couple in terms of just human couple. Like what you guys have is genuinely and authentic and so beautiful. So I will say that. But then there's another layer to you two, which is very different than the other couples that I have met. There are definitely couples that are madly in love with each other, have the traditional role of what couples should represent and all that. But you and Morgan don't have that. And I find that very interesting. You have like an extra layer, and I'm trying to figure, so I call that the rogue frequency because it takes up a lot of space for you guys to play out an experimental role. One of the things that you talk a lot about is you can feel when you talk about the other unions or the other teams or couples, you can feel the other when you guys are in what you call, do you guys call it a monad, nomad? What do you call it?
Monad?
Yes. So in that, where you can feel other couples of the same frequency kind of orbiting in the same area. Have you linked up with any of those couples in the physical? And what happens? Do you guys like vibrate, or
I think
portals open? What happens?
well, you got to understand something. We're getting this, like what we're talking about. It's just coming in, you know. I mean, we've been told things over the years. Okay, say over the last 3 years since we've been together in the physical, a lot of the time, most of the time, that we don't really. It comes in, and we don't talk about it. We talk about it to each other, and then later on, we might talk to you privately about it later on, because you have some intel that aligns with it. We'll get the same thing, and then we'll get the same thing. The 12 and the 13 seem to be a real big deal. Going back to your question, I can tell you the first time, to my knowledge, well, when we were in Kauai, we ran into, I want to say, I can think of 2 at the moment, maybe 3, I don't know. There was one night we stayed in a studio at a friend of a friend, right? We rented a studio for a couple of nights when we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. So we went outside, and we were sitting outside of their house. They were upstairs in their house, and we were in the studio downstairs. And all of a sudden, it started coming in. She started picking up, and basically the intel was that there was another divine couple carrying the code. And we were in their presence. Now, we didn't sit down with them that night. They were upstairs, we were downstairs in our own place. But they went on to explain that when 2 couples are in the same proximity, that it's like these are their words, nuclear cosmic blast.
Right.
And so we remembered that, and it did happen. That night I talked to the lady the next day, and there was some validation. It was just a brief discussion because she was leaving and we were leaving. But we have noticed and it's not like it happens in the moment. It's almost like you pick up on it after you're like away from the fire. But yeah, so that's what's been explained to us, that it's a very powerful scenario, and we're kind of getting acclimated with it and noticing it and picking up on it, because it doesn't always register here. Yeah, I covered it.
I love the prompting from Morgan.
Well, I don't want to forget. Well, I didn't know what we were going to do. I didn't know what you were going to do. So I was like, we talk about whatever y'all want to talk about. But this is good. You know, this is good. I don't have the detail on a lot of stuff she does. My mind's, you know, I don't have it. I can't always pick it up. But yeah, there's definitely a reaction. There's no doubt. Definitely.
Can other couples sense you and reach out to, like, have you had couples come out and kind of reach out and say, hey, we're of the same frequency?
Yeah.
Have you had that attraction?
Yeah, we've had that. We've had that, and we've also had quite a few individuals pick up on it. We have, I just got a message from, you know, somebody that's, you know, a lot of people know. And she said that, you know, you guys have been coming into my dream for the last 10 nights. We've been having conversations. We get a lot of that, you know, either Todd came or Morgan came or we both came. I've had a lot of people tell me, and a lot of people have told her, we both came. I know we're active, as we all are in dream state. But yeah, we've had individuals recognize us, I guess, and yeah, there's been other couples that have recognized.
So going back to Atlantis for you guys, so there, so in Atlantis, there were 12 temples in Atlantis. Each temple basically represents a high virtue of humanity, And to access the key to that temple, there is what we call the key to every temple is a shadow aspect that you have to master. So for you two, the interesting thing is, for me, you guys feel like the vibration of Osiris and Isis, where they actually are of two different temples as well. But for the Atlantean folklore, not every temple came together as a divine union, right? Like some temples were just held by a singular person in terms of the guardian of it. So in my theory, for the rogue frequency, tying back to Atlantis, tying back to you guys. So it's all kind of like little, like you said, following the breadcrumbs and seeing if we can put together the pieces, because everybody has pieces of the Atlantean story. I find it interesting that you guys were in Kauai, you were drawn to Kauai, and then you were drawn to Florida. And I'm drawn to Florida, but there's a little thing called coronavirus is kind of putting a pooper on my party. And so otherwise I would be there. I'm so attracted to like Florida. I never was before. It held no interest. I'm like, oh man, it's like Seniorsville over there in Florida, right? But for whatever reason, just recently, it's been a very strong call. So I may ditch my family and end up there anyways, because being the responsible parent, I can die, but my kids can't die. For you guys, going back to Atlantis, what do you feel that this merging is? Are you guys creating or unlocking, or what are you doing? You know, when it comes back, do you have any intel on that you can share?
Well, I mean, I can tell you what I can tell you. I mean, I think that and it's not just sacred union or sacred sexuality. I think it's just the whole expansion of the universe. But I think we came into this thing, all of us, with certain blueprints, certain templates that had been created. And once now that we've gotten to a certain point, or we're all starting to get to a certain point where we are aware of what those are, whether we're conscious fully of it or not, but intuitively and telepathically, that we can start to not just fulfill those, because we're already those, but now we can add to it. That's the way I see it. That's why the 13th, the rogue frequency, it's resonated with me ever since I talked to you about it. It was already resonating with me, just wasn't put into those words. So as an example, I can remember a year and a half ago, Jesus Magdalene consciousness came in and said, here's our template. You have our template now go expand it. And that's kind of what I see with the 13th frequency, because the numbers 12 and 13, not just in sacred union, play everywhere ever since I woke up 8-9 years ago, and many other people talk about it. But I think that's what's happening, and I think I like the word rogue because it can mean a lot of things. But one thing it definitely means, it's not going to do anything like everybody else does. And I've been told for 9 years, whatever you do, don't do anything that's been done before. So that makes sense. That code makes sense to me. And so that means 13th frequency, if you're talking, whatever the subject, the aspect of this ascension is, could be something that's never, very likely something that's never occurred before, whether it's, and ultimately it's a level of frequency or expansion. But what does that look like in literal terms? I don't know. It could be a lot of things, it could be a lot of things. I remember when I first met Morgan and we were merging, she came to visit, or we were talking, she said, you can merge with your mother. You can, and so this isn't it right? Well, this is a frequency. If this is code or frequency, it just has a label on it of X or Y or Z. The whole, it's not the words, it's a frequency. It's a level of illumination, or or knowing, or whatever you want to call it. And I think what happens is, when we, like even right now, like if you and I have a conversation, there's certain things that you may not be conscious of, or me, code that we're picking up from each other. And I think that's what we're doing here. Or, you know, that's what we're doing here. This present moment isn't anything that's occurred. I know everybody says, not everybody, but a lot of people say everything occurred at the same time. Well, I don't see that. I don't see it, because why are we conscious here all the time? You know, I mean, there's got to be a reason. And in the way the universe works in a paradoxical manner, you know, the smallest thing is the biggest thing. You know, the human, the smallest or the least important or the least powerful, whatever, ends up being the biggest power. And I
Yes.
think this is what we're coming into.
No, I totally agree. I have so it's funny. So this morning, Morgan texted me right away to share her dragon experience that we just kind of talked at the top of the show. And I was like, I had a weird dragon dream too, but mine wasn't definitely was not as exotic and nice as yours. But
I heard about
it was like, really, of all the great narratives that dragons can present, this is what I had. So in my dream, it was a dragon boat race. And so there were all these teams lining up ready for this race. And I just stumbled on it. And I was so pissed off because no one told me about it and I wanted to be a part of it. So I was talking to the organizer and saying, I'm going to be part of the dragon boat race. And they looked at me like, they said, no, you can't. You don't have a boat and you don't have a dragon. It's just you. And I'm like, no, I really want to do this. Like, it's like a child where like, I really want to play it. I practiced, you know, kind of thing. And so the organizer was like, well, you better have a dragon and you better have a boat. And I saw in the kind of peripheral of my eye, this rubber dinghy that is so janky and broke ass with holes in it. Like it's a sad boat compared to the teams some of these teams had magnificent ships that were tethered to like 20 dragons, all different shapes. And they were beautiful. Like these were crazy dragon, like not a traditional one in a boat, you know, with a dragon head on it. These were like ships basically pulled by dragons. And I really wanted to be part of it. So I was like, no, I'm going to take that. And then my daughter joined me. There was a third person. I can't remember who the third person was, but my daughter came with me, but she is her 3-year-old self. So she's a toddler. In the dream, I had a pool noodle and one oar and also a, you know, on lacrosse teams, they have that paddle thing. I'm not an athletic person. I don't even know what that thing's called, but you know how it has like the net that doesn't really do anything? That was my other paddle. So I was set up to obviously not succeed, but I was able to enter the race because I had a boat and I had a dragon. And I'm reflecting back this morning. I'm like, I don't recall having a dragon. I just recall me. But then I realized it was either my daughter or the third person was in dragon form, but the dragon was in the rubber dinghy, not pulling the rubber, not like the rest of the teams. And I'm like, this is a shit dream. Anyways, the race started and they released the Kraken. I'm very dramatic in my dreams. So the Kraken comes out and it does its thing where it's attacking basically all these, it's kind of like attacking all the dragons. And some of the dragons come in, they are the power and they use their different powers to try to navigate around the Kraken and get right with it. But you know what? I ended up winning the damn race. And it was because nobody paid attention to me. No one cared. I was in this janky, broke ass rubber dinghy with a hole. I was sinking half the time. Most of the time I was bailing out the water, but just working the elements that was available to me. So I was working the water element. And so the water was helpful in pushing me through and also the air. And because everybody else was such a big deal, you know, key players, all the attention, the Kraken was just basically focusing on that and trying to get them out as in this race. And I just slipped right through because I was insignificant. But I won the race. So I woke up and I'm like, I can't believe I won the race. And then I thought about it. And Morgan was so sweet. She goes, well, maybe the metaphor of your rubber dinghy was your self-worth. And I'm like, no, honey, it was not my self-worth. I think that was my human suit. That's the metaphor for my
well, yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, yeah. I mean, like when that dragon came in last night, I told you the first thing I heard was, you are the dragon. But it was in a way like not you are the dragon. It was like, It was power.
Yeah, you
But that,
became the dragon.
but that makes that to me would make sense. That the human, you know, which is actually equal to everything that was, you know, in that race.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's pretty cool. You
Yeah,
know,
so it was the same thing. So you guys in your dream last night became a dragon in a much nicer version than mine, a lot more heroic. And then for me in my dream, I was somehow the dragon, and that's how I was able to enter. But I didn't recognize myself, so I was a dragon in a rubber dinghy with a hole in it.
yeah, and see this thing with the, you know, this thing with the dragons, it's intriguing because what is that? You know, I mean, I think it's some, you know, I look at it as, you know, we both look at these experiences. They come in, and we, you know, we absorb it, integrate it, and then we move on. We don't get stuck on it. But there has been, you know, what I mean, this has really picked up not just for us, but for a lot of people in the last 12 months, 14 months. And it seems to be more, and Rick was talking about it. When I talked to him the last time, he was talking about it. Several people, somebody else that I talked to said they'd never had anything. Oh, Greg Prescott from NYC. I talked to him about a month ago. He said, man, I had a dragon thing. What's going on? But you know, it's I don't know. To me, it's just maybe it's the you know, the metaphoric representation of another threshold achieved, or a certain level of code that's been awakened. I don't know. I mean, so much of what we're all doing is we're being put into a corner to be present, and you know, we got a lot of intel prior to 10 days ago before she left, that had to do with distraction. Another word they gave us for distraction was addiction. There was
Right.
many types of addiction that we don't consider addiction, any of us,
Right.
that are, when you think about it, distractions. This is, you know, this is another, you know, another way to kind of gauge where you're at. I think too is you know, what are you receiving and what are you doing with that information? Because I don't think the universal energy is going to allow us to continue to ignore it.
No, we're at definitely we're at a precipice where I feel like everyone is so uncomfortable that we are. It's forcing the element of change is being forced on us because you're so uncomfortable. Sometimes change happens a little bit more gracefully. That I don't feel that for this time period. I think there's a lot going on. People, the dragon thing for me is about purification and galvanization, right? So one of the things that they do exceptionally well for that energy is going in and clearing out any codes that are no longer helpful or useful to you. So it can create space for new DNA code like soul merging or Galvanus or whatever it is that your potentiality is, for sure. And I think for each dragon that appears as an experience, of course, it could be just your consciousness creating it, but it's still a very strong narrative where it's empowering, where it's just like, okay, so you guys are leveling up. You've done this much work together as a team. And every time you do that, there's a new, it's interesting that you don't have the same dragon come back, okay? You guys usually have new ones that appear. Do you ever have a return one?
Yeah, we've had a couple come back. That the blue dragon came.
Yes.
The white, the silvery dragon, I think, came twice. You know, it's yeah, I get what you're saying. There's something about it. There's something about the dragon energy, consciousness, messenger. I don't know what you want to call it, but I mean, there's something going on with it, and it does seem to have a lot to do with creativity or let's say creation, and galvanizing, like you're talking about, getting rid of stuff, like, you know, like, in other words, coming in like the Kali goddess, the Hindu goddess Kali, you know, coming in and, you know, ripping out, you know, not taking any BS from a place of love. That's come in many times when they've come in like, hey, this is serious, you know, there's no playing around, let's get to work. Yeah. So, and you know, and it's given us a lot of guidance. Part of that is we understand that we're to continue doing what we're doing and start coming out and opening up the forum in regard to these subjects. We're looking very seriously at having something a couple of times a month, like every 2 weeks, having a 2 hour kind of a group session, on these subjects more in depth, because they aren't something you really can take and cover in an hour.
Right.
Because
Like
they
you have to
don't.
take kind of have to take slices, right? And it's almost like, you know what I love about Soulogy is the community that you have been growing is been very inclusive. So I want to give props to you for starting that, because I know the grassroots movement of it, you started it in a place of absolute darkness as a form of you to reach out to create a community that you felt like you didn't have at that point. And then the beautiful thing is it grew. So it's almost like one light beacon goes up and the rest kind of see your light and then gravitate towards it, where now it's at the point where you created a safe space, regardless of what your thoughts are and where you've been. It's a safe space to talk about whatever topics that are coming to you, and there's not judgment on your experiences. And what happens is within this community, there are kind of micro soul families that kind of like, I really love that topic. Can you expand on it? Oh, I really love that topic. Can we expand on it? Can I share my story? So I think if you're like group forums that you start, and if you start with a topic like that, I think that would create a lot of activations in people and confirmations. And because it is for the rogue frequency, I would say anyone that's watching this, you are a rogue frequency. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be present on here. You'd be binge watching Netflix, right? So it's one of those, the rogue frequency community needs a lot of space in order to thrive. As soon as you start putting parameters on the community, people don't thrive. It's like all of a sudden you're back into the general collective where you have to conform. So for you, you're almost, I wouldn't call you, well, I can call you a grandfather because you're officially a grandfather. You're almost like the grandfather.
Don't say that, because then she's the grandmother. She's not going
so that would be super fun.
Well, okay. So there's, I mean, on the linear timeline, looked like it was me. We came to understand a couple of years ago what actually happened, and it was confirmed in Hawaii. But I agree with what you're saying in terms of the openness. It has, Soulogy's rooted in a balanced, and I'm not talking specifically about Morgan and I, but in a balanced, the core of it with an intentional balance of masculine and feminine. Both of the incarnations that are the first caretakers of it, because there's more than us. In both cases, it wasn't all of this or all of that. It was both put together. Like, for instance, it was her intel from 2008 to create a Soul Speaks 5D in a community like this. It was my inclination, intuitively and spontaneously, just pushing forward, and just sharing my own expansion or experience or expressions publicly. And then other people started to do it. But it's always been key to both of us that, yes, there's no, within, we don't get a lot of, even in the group, we don't get a lot of BS. I mean, it's a very diverse group of expressions and people. And you're right, it's like a buffet, like Morgan says, it's like a buffet. Some people like this, some people like that, some people like this, but it's so wide open that you can pretty much find your way to oneness somewhere. And I have seen a lot of micro soul family circles over the years. In fact, she's the first one that pointed out to me about 3 years ago. And I started to look for it, and I could see all the different, you know, people coming together, and there was a lot of groups that were spawned, you know, from Soulogy. But I think that's important. But it's not the numbers; it's the vortex. You know, I say that it's a mirror of the universe, always adding frequencies to an ever expanding vibration, which is what the
Right.
universe is.
Mm-hmm.
A place to, you know, when I say oneness, I don't mean like cliche, but a place to uh, clear the separation, a
Right.
place to find the common ground with everyone, even on the
Mm-hmm.
terms, even on this. This is Soulogy, so I watched the show with Tien and you and Rick. I thought it was an amazing show. No, I didn't,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you why. Because well, I always look at intentions. I look at intention, and it is what it is. But the intentions were there with all three people involved and the people that were in the audience. The topics that were being discussed were like a lot of the stuff we discuss. We have to discuss at the surface level, almost a superficial level, because
Right.
we are going real deep now. So if we're talking about, for instance, sacred unions, I don't know, you know, how all this works, but there's no doubt in my mind part of the 13th rogue frequency represents any combination possible,
Yeah.
any two people. I mean, how do we know it couldn't be a person and a dog? Dog has a
Right.
soul. I mean,
Yeah.
so being open, I think, is paramount.
Yeah.
The higher your love, your wisdom, uh, your knowing goes, the more expansive and open you're going to be. The minute we shut down anywhere, any aspect of ourselves, we're kicking ourselves in the ass. And we watch this happen every day in the Lightworker community. I'm not knocking the Lightworker community. The only thing I'm saying is that it's part of the process. It's part of the characteristic. It's part of our challenge. It's our shadow that we can actually view in plain sight every single day. And I think that's a benefit. That's why I think that show was so good, because to me, you know, we've done over 1,700 shows here um, in over 3,000 video productions, and I know some of those early ones pissed a lot of people off. But, but
I
the trick,
personally
but
love those ones though. I do. I am in full agreement with you. I love those ones because they're full. Some people call it triggers, but they are full of a lot of activations. Like even with that one, my poor co-host Tian took I would say when it comes to brand new topics that make you really uncomfortable, what happens for humanity's natural is a fight or flight kind of reaction, right? You've never been exposed to it. So when you've been exposed to it, it's just one of those things. If it comes up as fight, of course they're going to defend their comfort zone. That is to be expected, and that's okay. You can get there. But of the topics that we went through on that one, I would say of the three of us, Tian definitely took the beating. So it was one of those things, and it's only because that's his genetic makeup. He is encoded to take a really hard path. I'm not sure why, but he's just coded for that way. So he has the capacity to take quite a beating. So sometimes he has to go into retreat. And then there's Rick, who's just clueless. Like he's just not connected in of what actually unfolded at the human level. Unless he's watching this, he thought the show was beautiful, and he made so much connections. It's funny.
I thought it was great.
Right? Afterwards, you're like, yeah, you know, we're trying to kind of stress a point and you totally missed the point, but that's okay. I know energetically it was at least seeded for that. So it was,
Well,
yeah,
I mean, look, a trigger, what is a trigger? A trigger is a door to an activation.
That's right.
You know,
absolutely.
even if we don't get it the first time or the second or the third time. The other thing is anyone, Tien, you, me, Rick, anyone, there's something to be said for people that are going to get on the screen and go for it.
Yeah.
I've shown my ass plenty of times, and you know, I admire TN. I admire Rick. You know, I think the intention is where it's at. We're all gonna
Learning together.
yeah, we're all
Yeah.
gonna show our ass, you know, and I think that's really, you know, I don't know. I think, like I always say, you know, another way to say I am soul is I'm not afraid to show my ass. And I think when we can all get to the point where we get past embarrassment, past saying something, realizing later, you know, maybe it was me or whatever the case is, being real. You know, I think it's so weird because that's it. You know, it's I think that's a big thing about the losing distractions is you get you start to hear yourself, not other people. So, you know, you do other people. And of course, it's from a scattered perspective most of the time, or at least until we can elevate. But you start to hear yourself. Why am I saying this? Does it have integrity? You know, what's my motive? You know, and you start to discover things about yourself. And these triggers, shows like that, I think are actually a lot more beneficial than the ones that go full blown fluffy love and light.
So okay, so let's go. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
What does the next stage of Soulogy look like for you and Morgan? So we talked a little bit of today was about a surface kind of guiding on some pretty amazing topics that you can deep dive with guidance. So I feel like you guys are great ambassadors for the topics, especially Morgan, who's a keyboard warrior tonight instead of in front of the camera. So I hope this programming is up to her quality because she's just taking a break right now. She was supposed to be on, but we'll pull her on some other day when she's not pukey and all that. But is there will you guys be presenting topics that we can get deeper in once we kind of figure out the surface level? Can it be? Will you guys be doing workshops, or what will you guys be offering? Like, you can't hold that information to yourself. That's
no. We understand, and we have understood for a while. The conference in Florida was a big step for her.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, what's happened in the last 10 days has been a big step. You know, me, you know, that energy stepping down and the feminine stepping up. So, you know, we know what's in front of us. So we're looking at we're going to have a business meeting, you know, in the next day or two. We've already kind of discussed some things. One of the things that we're going to do, it looks very strong, is that we're going to come out every couple of weeks and do a 2-hour presentation workshop Q&A on these specific subjects. And where it goes from there, I don't know, but this is something that we would use also to help facilitate Soulogy, because, you know, we're pretty much viewer supported. It's that and 3 loans that I've taken out in the last year and a half that have, you know, that cost, you know, and, so we're looking for ways to, in an equal exchange, 5D commerce type of way, to fulfill the direction that we've been given, and also to help facilitate Soulogy's expansion, which everybody knows. I've been, you know, talking about it for over a year, 24/7, 365, multi-channel, handheld, accessible. But this is not the driving force. The driving force is these core messages. We understand that is the core of our purpose. And at that core, as a result of that, it's also the core of Soulogy. As we go, it goes. And if we can align with, as we align with the right frequency, other frequencies, as it's happening. I mean, it's already happened. Come and it just continues to expand. So Yes, we're going to be doing some stuff online. We may be doing some stuff as we travel. But the main thing is I think we're kind of focused on that, and also to put together some material on the subjects that we can put out, especially while we're here over the next 6 weeks. So yeah, we'll be out there more, and she's ready.
Yes. She just needs to integrate and embody, but she'll be ready. It's
Well,
like being
honestly, it's either one of two things. We just had both of us. I mean, our biggest expansion, I mean, integration, whatever you want to call it, which watching her and being with her as a reflection of the feminine energy, I'm telling you, this has been building and building and building. And it's either that or tomorrow's another 22/22 day. And it feels, it feels like you said a minute ago, you used the word precipice. I think it's here. And I would be surprised if some big things happen, over the next few days. In other words, what I'm saying is her condition right now, these past 4 days, may very well have something to do with the energy that's here or coming or both.
Well, it's very exciting. I think we can wrap it up because I'm starving. Yeah, it's one of those things where there's so much information, right? And you guys are such huge ambassadors of sharing that information. So that's really great. That's one of the reasons why I'm a huge fan of the Soulogy network. So anyone that's, if this show resonates, please support the Todd and Morgan Soul Train, because you guys are kind of RVing it through Florida right now. I'm sure Todd will drop the link somewhere in the bottom of the comments, as he usually does. And it's one of those things where I feel like in this community, people have there's a little bit of distortion when it comes to the monetary exchange or commerce. So I'm really excited that you guys are taking that on and basically clearing that distortion and just saying, you know what, we're in transitionary times. At the base of the transitionary times, there is a new modality for energetic exchange where both parties feel really good about it. But in the meantime, let's support each other. And the best way we can support each other is show the love, show the money. And if you can't do either, you know what, just show up and be present. And it's one of those things where it's just like, you can, Soulogy, I just discovered your group. You can jump onto that group and be part of that group. Sometimes a kind word in the middle of a day to another person makes a big difference, right? So it's keep that energy going in the community. That's what's going to help grow. And that's what will support the next expansion of humanity, whatever that is. And it's too bad that Morgan was just in the background today, but I'm sure we will schedule her.
She'll be back to you in a few days.
She'll be back. She'll be more vertical.
You asked me, where do we go from here too? I just want to say, of course, the primary thing is what we're about to come out with. That's the core.
Yeah.
And maybe you could see that as our role within Soulogy. And there'll be other people that step up with other skills, abilities, or specialties or specific downloads. The second thing, of course, is we're definitely going to continue to expand and get to the point where we have our own independent situation. The other thing that we talked about that we're focused on right now during this next 6 weeks, and I know you're hungry, but I just want to tell you this, is we want to raise the frequency of the primary vehicle, which is 5D. We want to de-emphasize it as a marketing tool, and that's not to take a shot at anybody. We want to de-emphasize it as a marketing platform, and re-emphasize the expressions, the experiences, and the intel of people, whether they're known by a bunch of people or whether they're not. And it's something we've done, but we want to just make sure that to your point, that we keep it pure, and that and because another aspect of Soulogy, remember, is 5D commerce, and we're all figuring out what that is. So they all kind of go together. So yeah, so that's what I wanted to say. So you can go eat now. You were here to eat some of my beans.
I know. Now I need a burger. I'm like starving right now. So let's wrap it up. Did you have any other last words?
No, but I just want to say that this is kind of happened. That's why I loved it. It's just kind of like, I was putting the post up last night, and I realized, you know what? Because I've always been like, man, I wish there was somebody to be like, like the moderator when I can't go on.
Right.
And I realized, oh, well, Hung's going to be the moderator. I thought, oh, she's the first moderator besides me on Soul Speaks 5D. So I just want to say thank you. It's an honor that you're here, and I'd love to see you do it again. So.
Well, thank you for trusting me with your show. That's a big leap of faith, because you never know what shit falls out of my mouth. Thank you for everyone that joined us tonight. It was great having you on in the guest seat. I'm sure that was a little bit different for you, and trying to speak on behalf of Morgan while she texts us from the bedroom or wherever she is at. Send my love to her. Hopefully she feels a lot better. And yeah, it was great. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right. See you later, honey.
Okay. Bye now.